Hi, thanks for coming to learn with me today about some of the out-of-the-box, or as they call them, pre-configured dashboards inside of Edge NXT. These are great dashboards to use to get some quick data, as well as really kind of monitor your retention and acquisition and live hunt information. All of the dashboards can be found under Analysis, Fundraising Dashboards. One of the first times that you open it, they typically all kind of open up in a big row here, but if you don't see them, you would click the plus sign and you can find them in the list. All of the ones that can't come with NXT will say pre-configured dashboard. So you can select these, and these are all available to you as soon as you have access into the system. As mentioned in another video, it's really important before you use any of these to make sure that you understand and have reviewed with your organization the settings. Under settings and giving analysis, you can go in and change how the system calculates received and committed dollars. This is very important because those calculations, your selection of what gift types you want to be calculated, determine the calculations that you're going to see automatically populate inside of all of these dashboards. So as you can see, on the ones at the top are the ones that come with the system. There is an overview dashboard. There are ones that specifically focus on campaigns, funds, and appeals, which are the main gift structure and that drive basically all reporting inside of Razor's Edge. Then there are some more, fun ones in terms of looking at retention and acquisition and things like that. So we've got a retention dashboard, acquisition, and a recapture dashboard. So those are really helpful in terms of looking at donor cycle type of information and things like that. So additionally, there are ones on actions and on opportunities. So those are good as well when you're looking to assess and analyze more of prospect management and staff type of activity. And then the benchmarking dashboard is really helpful, and we can get to that a little bit later, but it has really good data kind of compiled from other Razor's Edge databases that are like yours in various ways that you can change the settings a little bit. So that's a really good one too. If you're just curious about how you measure up against similar organizations, that's a good one as well. So the overview dashboard, it has a few filters at the top. Most of them only have a few settings at the top that you can modify, but typically the ones that are offered are usually sufficient. Now, if you need something more robust or just something that's more customized, then you can go into Dashboard Builder and create something. These cannot be modified outside of just selecting various things in the drop-down. So you can pick, if you're looking at, overall in the Overview tab, are there certain campaigns we want to look at? Do we want to look at it by fund, appeal? And then you can also change the date as well, and the revenue type. And whenever you do that, it's going to give you basic stats on your revenue, what's past due, the average gift, number of gifts. You can see patterns over the last 2 fiscal years, and then 3 when you include the current fiscal year. And then it gives you data on, okay, what are your top campaigns, top funds, top appeals. And then it gives you some charts about constituent codes, so you can see where are most of your dollars coming from. There's some information about the donor lifecycle as well. So I find this chart to be kind of helpful in terms of assessing overall patterns. I know that's something that is typically a popular thing that is asked of development staff, or that's typically asked of database staff, is to, hey, can you provide me of what our acquisition has looked like over time, or what does our retention look like over the last 10 years? This is a really good chart to easily and quickly get to that information. And then there's some quick data points on actions and opportunities as well. So again, kind of looking at the campaigns, funds, and appeals, it's really similar where, it's kind of breaking it down and zeroing in on just different campaigns. So based on our settings up here that we've selected, based on campaign, fund, and appeal date. And then they do have these campaign categories, which I find really helpful. So if you have campaign, fund, or appeal categories set up in your system, I highly suggest using those. It makes it a little bit easier instead of kind of going and having to manually click in different ones. If they're already grouped, then you can just use those groups in the reporting. And then you can also decide, do you want to use active or inactive campaigns, funds, or appeals. So then it gives you, great data about progress to goal, how are we doing with our campaigns according to the various funds, by the various appeals, how do our campaigns look by constituent code, by giving level, and then by age group. So, some basic data there, and it's very similar for funds and appeals as well. Pretty much the same, the same exact data. So looking at a little bit more about the lifecycle dashboards, these are really great because it gives you, in addition to, the stats about your retention, which is a really quick and easy way to find information about your retention, is it can also tell you, hey, here are all your live events. So as the tricky thing with these is that these calculate based on fiscal year to date. So if you have various campaigns, or depending on how you report on the information, if you're using campaigns, funds, or appeals, but you don't follow a strict kind of year-to-date guideline, so if you have gifts that are technically in the same fiscal year but are coded to different campaigns and things like that, then this gets a little bit kind of inflexible, and in some ways maybe not usable or useful, because it's calculating based on year to date, and you can't change that on fiscal year to date. So if I'm looking at my annual fund, oh, okay, maybe our capital. Oh, that's weird. Oh, the empty value, okay. So if we are looking at, these 20 retained donors, these are just according to their giving last year in the fiscal year, they're retained. And then we have 10,000, almost 11,000 that haven't given yet. And that shows us we have about almost 1.5 million in retained revenue that we have year to date. And then this is really great as long as your data, is accurate with year-to-date information. It can calculate the first year. So how many first year, donors do we have who have now given again? And then we have, some good line charts here to kind of see patterns with donor retention and then the retention of those dollars, which is really helpful compared to the last 2 fiscal years. And then there's kind of a rolling donor retention where we can see patterns over time. So the acquisition and recapture dashboards are all pretty similar. Again, focused on fiscal year to date. Make sure you have your revenue type and campaign and fund and appeal information set up correctly. This is being slow. Okay, let's see. Okay, so to look at more of the prospect management type of data with actions and opportunities. For opportunities, it gives you an overview of how many active opportunities are in the pipeline, and then it adds up the asked, expected, and funded amounts. And then you can obviously, based on the deadline dates, you can adjust the settings. So definitely recommend if you're looking within fiscal year, calendar year, that you really kind of look at these 4 dates on the bottom, depending on what you want to look at. So if you're trying to look at ones that are funded in a certain fiscal year, ones that are expected in a fiscal year, ones where the deadline was in a certain year, or ones that were asked, those are all important to think through. You can also look for people that, okay, let's look at all the people who are in cultivation or solicitation, and then all this information will update. You can also, based on the status of the proposal, filter on that. You can filter on the various purposes. So if we're really only interested in ones that are coded to, proposals in the year for discretionary, then we can select just that. We can also, based on the person, so the fundraiser, we can select that as well. So if you don't have any really robust, custom dashboards built out, you can still use this dashboard to see, based on various fundraisers, what does their activity look like within the date range that we select based on these settings. So it gives us the overall stats, a list of the opportunities, and then some information about, how many, basically how their asks are being dispersed. So where are they asking, what areas are they asking for, and then the various statuses of those opportunities. So that's helpful for, managing the pipeline. And then if you're using some of the rating information inside of the system, then it can basically project. Let's see. Oh, okay, back that up. So with the projection accuracy, it's basically looking at the expected and asked amounts, and then expected and funded amounts, and saying, okay, how good is the fundraiser or fundraisers doing in terms of, I'm thinking I'm going to ask this much, and this is what I actually asked, or I asked this much, and this is what I'm expected, and did that actually come to fruition, and how far apart are those numbers? So just gives you some good information and insights into your overall pipeline. With actions, similar, where you're able to select based on who the action is assigned to, the dates, the categories, the types. So this is, a really quick and easy way for someone who's managing fundraisers, or even a fundraiser, to assess their own progress, to come in and kind of, you can see based on the date range and all the other filter options that you've selected, what are some of the stats looking like? How many actions do I have by various types? How many high value actions do I have based on various weeks, and what does that look like over time? And a high value action is defined as a meeting or a phone call. You can also look at actions by various categories and the status. And as mentioned, the benchmarking dashboard is really helpful in trying to see how you compare to other organizations. So if I'm an arts, if I am an arts organization, I would want to select this, and then based on the size of revenue of our organization, because I want to make sure I'm being compared to similar orgs, and then I can select the year, and then it gives me information about how I am doing compared to others in terms of our retention, our recapture, our acquisition, and then how we're doing with giving compared to others. So this is a really great way, and maybe once or twice a year, to kind of check in and see how you're comparing and measuring up to others. So that's just a basic overview of the various pre-configured dashboards inside the system. One thing I do want to mention as well is that any view can be saved. So if I get my settings the way that I want them, I can save them. You can also, so once it's saved, you can also schedule this dashboard to be emailed. So you can tell the system, which tabs do you want to be emailed to you, when. You can add recipients, you can send a copy of it to someone, and you can also include a message. So here is your, overall fundraising dashboard for the week. These can be printed. So unlike the custom dashboards, this can actually be printed into a PDF. And then you can also export to PDF or export the data into Excel. So again, there's some really good options just natively inside of the database without even getting into a custom dashboard that you should definitely look at.